All right, so my name is Debbie Dypko. I'm 53 years old. I'm a personal trainer. I've been doing personal training for 5.5 years now, actually. Prior to that, I had a career, a 25-year career, a corporate career as a statistician. I did statistical and data analysis for marketing companies. Left that world and then decided to get into the world of fitness. I've always been a gym rat. I've always been active my entire life. When I was younger, I was a competitive figure skater, and then coached and taught that for a while as well. So I figured my next natural step in life would be to kind of make something that was my passion into a career, and that's how I ended up getting into training.
You know, like one big thing that I see is that a lot of the older crowd is still ego lifting, still lifting heavy. So what do you feel like people that are in their 20s or in early 30s should take into consideration as they're approaching 40 and 50?
So I would say to that, there's an expression, youth is wasted on the young, and you only understand that as you start to get older. So what I would say to them is two things. Number one, enjoy it while it lasts. And number two is to make sure you tailor your expectations and understand that as you get older, it's going to get different. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you stop working harder or stop being consistent. You just have to understand that things are going to be different. You're going to hurt more. You're going to have sometimes more difficulty lifting the weight. You're going to have difficulty maintaining your gains or achieving some gains. It's just part of the natural aging process. But understand that the reason that you're here and that you're doing this is to stave that off as long as you possibly can. Just making sure that what it is that you're doing, you're shifting your goals a little bit. So when you were younger, it was probably more about looking good and the muscles and this, that, and the other thing. As you get older, it's a little bit more about maintaining your ability to do the things, what we call your ADLs, your activities of daily living. So making sure that you're able to, bend down and pick something up off the ground, get up off the floor, bend over and tie your shoes, reach up into a cabinet to get something out of the cabinet. You just kind of have to understand that as you age, things are going to be different, and you have to just kind of accept that and work with it, make the most of it. Yeah, I would say, kind of just look what I can still do. You know what I mean? Not so much to dwell on, when I was 25, I used to be able to bench press almost 300 pounds, and now at 55, I can only do 150. But you know what? There's a lot of 55-year-olds that would kill to be able to bench press 150 pounds. So it's also a little bit about changing your perspective. I like to say, looking at things through a little bit of a different lens. Sometimes think about it, your outlook as a pair of glasses. When you're younger, you have a different lens that you're looking at life through. You feel a little bit invincible. You have time on your side. You're going all out. As you get older, you need to change those glasses and look through things with a different lens, coming from a different point of view. And like I said, like those folks that have always been in the gym, that maybe are finding that they can't do what they used to be able to do. Still, there's a lot of people in your age group that would kill to be able to do what you can do now. So I'd say it's just a matter of changing your perspective a little bit, and just making sure that, again, that you're still able to do the things that you want and need to do in your life. And it's not so much about, impressing the guy next to you with how much you can lift. It's more about not only extending your life, but the quality of your life.
So obviously, like slower eccentrics, lessening the load.
That's
is there
correct.
Things that
Lower like I always have a saying with my clients: make the movement matter. And so, it's one thing if you can sit there as a 55-year-old and you're trying desperately to do the same weight that you could do when you were half that age, but maybe your range of motion is only half of what it used to be. So you have to kind of take that into consideration. You want to make sure that, like, when you're doing it, make that movement matter. Make sure you're doing the full range of motion. And the weight itself almost doesn't matter. It's making sure that you're still able to do the actual movement the way that you were always able to do the movement. When you're young, you're sprinting, right? You know what I mean? You're trying to get to a goal as fast as you possibly can. But when you're older and you look back on it, you wish you had looked at it more as a journey. So that way you kind of made sure that you had the endurance to last, for your entire lifetime. So it's kind of like, those people that are doing those sprints and like going all out, whatever, may find themselves burnt out before they even get to be 50 years old. So you have to, but you don't see it from that perspective when you're that age. Because when you're that age, you think you can go on forever. And it's only when you get to that age you realize, holy, I can't do that. So it's a little bit about, your expectations and kind of a little bit of forward thinking too, making sure that what it is that you're doing is going to enable you to be in the race for as long as you can, as opposed to just, finishing at a certain point and petering out and stopping.
My next thing is, I know that you do a lot of circuit training, obviously.
Yes.
But what are the benefits of that, particularly for you? Like, where do you find enjoyment in that?
I do. There's a lot of benefits to circuit training. Number one, when I'm training my clients, particularly the sessions that I do with my clients are only a half an hour long. Some of them, that's the only half an hour that they're in the gym. So you want to maximize that half an hour. So when you're doing circuit training, it allows you to properly rest certain body parts, but you're not resting. So in other words, you can move from muscle group to muscle group and still keep moving to kind of get a little bit of that cardio effect, but still effectively be resting certain parts of your body. So that's kind of like the number one, I'd say, the biggest asset of circuit training. It's a lot more efficient, and it enables you to kind of get that little bit of cardio mix, again, properly resting, but keeping you moving for the entire time. It also kind of staves off boredom. I find that when you're moving, you're doing exercises going from one movement to the next, it's a little bit easier to kind of stay with it, as opposed to just doing like one set of an exercise and then resting for 15 seconds and then going back and then doing that same exercise. That tends to, I think, lead to a little bit of boredom. That's during that 15-second rest, people are picking up their phones, they're chit-chatting, so then their rest turns from 15 seconds into a minute and a half. And so I just find that circuit training keeps you a little bit more on track, staves off the boredom a little bit. For me, it's really kind of like the way that I find that I'm getting like the most results for myself and my clients.
Now, the next thing, my favorite question is, why do you love the lunge so much?
So, lunges, yes. And it's not really just lunges. It's any sort of movement that requires you kind of like upholding the weight of your body. So anything like lunges, squats, push-ups, pull-ups, anything that requires you to bear your own body weight is an excellent, excellent exercise. The one thing about lunges is that because you're actually separating your feet and taking that base and staggering your base, is that it also brings an element of stability into it. So like when I'm working with older clients and I'm testing them and seeing how their stability is, lunges is one of the things I have them do, because you have to like spread your feet apart and create a little bit of a less stable base, meaning they're separating their feet. So a lunge, you're getting everything. If you're holding on to weight on top of your body, you can bring your core into it. So you're working your legs, you're working your core, you're working your hips. Again, you're working a little bit on mobility. So lunge is really kind of like one of those really great all-encompassing movements. But that's not that I'm not going to give a shout out to all the other weight-bearing exercises, but lunges kind of have that extra added element.
So like I feel like there's a lot of everyone. You see me, I do a lot of machines, and I just told you that these push-ups really humbled me.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to work on that stability. So what are let's just kind of like give a quick list of movements or exercises that allow you to use different body parts that allow you that kind of humble the person to be like, oh wow, I didn't realize that this muscle was so underactive or so weak.
Yeah. Well, any of the body weight exercises are like that. So pull-ups are the same thing, you know what I mean? Even till this day, as much weight as I lift, I still have trouble with pull-ups. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things, like you said, it's very humbling. So pull-ups, push-ups, but also remember that there's ways that you could do all of these exercises that are gonna modify them. So we talk about push-ups, but you could do push-ups, you can maneuver your hand and arm position to make push-ups a little different. You could raise your feet or lower your feet. You can lift your upper body up and do them so that you're a little bit elevated. You can put handles down on the floor so that way you're taking some of the pressure off your wrists. So even when you talk about one movement or one exercise, push-ups, there's a lot going on just under the realm of push-up, right? So to kind of keep that in mind. But I would say, I think a lot of people tend to forget about their core. And when I say core too, a lot of people think core equals abs. They kind of equate the two. And I always have to remind people that abs are part of your core, but your core is not just your abs. Your core is kind of like from your neck down to your butt all the way around. So you have to incorporate like your back muscles and your glutes as well. And I think people don't realize that. I think people tend to ignore the entire core and focus just on the front, just on your ab.
So to kind of just rewrap everything, the core and your abs are part of each other, but the core is not just your abs.
That's correct, yeah. And again, a lot of these people think that just because they can go up and do, 25, 50 sit-ups without blinking an eye, that means they have a strong core, and that's not necessarily the case because they're ignoring everything else that your core is. And also keep in mind, your core is what, even if you are sitting all day at a desk job, it's important to have a strong core so you're not hunching over and so I would say that that's probably one of the most ignored areas, or I should say people are the least educated about, because again, they think just doing sit-ups is going to cover them and they're good, and that's not necessarily the case.
I feel like for me, working on my core, like something as a lunge, getting better at it is making me more confident, because as I'm sitting throughout the day, I can engage like my certain parts of my core that I just necessarily wouldn't have felt.
That's correct.
Like the side ab machine, I feel like that's a really good movement for me to like work that part. I feel like I noticed it a lot more after.
Yeah, and again, as a trainer, when you are cueing and giving like vocal prompts to your clients, one of the things that I'm always saying is, regardless of what we're doing, even if it's an upper body exercise, I say shoulders back, keep them down, pull those abs in and engage your core. So you could be actually technically working your core on almost any exercise that you do if you are engaging your abs, even if you're doing a bicep curl. Standing up nice and tall, keep those abs nice and tight, breathe in, and you're working your core even while you're doing, a bicep curl. Yeah.
That's good. Okay. So we're going to shift the direction and talk more about I have a few notes for myself, just kind of recap what you mentioned from what I know about your husband.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going, because I just want to know, I guess, the story, because I know you guys have met since you guys were kids, as far as I'm aware.
Yes.
And you started dating after high school or during high school?
A couple of weeks before I graduated high school. He had already graduated. He's 2 years older than I am. Yep.
And you guys also married very early.
Young for that age. I was 23 when I got married. He was 25.
And you guys are still happily married with two children.
Yes. Yes.
That's a lot to unpack. That's
Yes.
over 20, 30 years of just story.
So I think the most important thing is when your relationships they're work. Every relationship is work. And what people need to realize is there's going to come a certain point in time where all that initial butterflies in your stomach stuff it's just not going to be there anymore. And so when you're picking somebody to be your life partner, I think it's important not only that you're love them and in love with them, but that you actually like them. You like who they are as a person. And I kind of I have this little mental thing, what I call the rocking chair test. So what that means is, let's say after you've been together 40 years, you've raised your kids, you've dealt with everything you've dealt with when it comes to raising a family, you're both retired, you're sitting on a porch somewhere, both of you each have your own rocking chair. And if you look over at that person and you're content to just sit there with them, that means they passed the rocking chair test. If you look over at that person and you kind of want to push them over backwards off the porch, then you know that's not good. But I kind of think about, again, thinking ahead, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. My husband was always a person that I felt, I liked him from the very day because I liked the person that he was. And and I always felt that we'd be able to get through everything together, because that's something that couples don't think about when they first get married. It's they only think about all the good times, the wedding, the this, the that. Life throws a lot of bad stuff at you, and you have to think about how you and that person are going to handle that bad stuff together. And that bad stuff could involve your kids if you have kids. It could involve your parents, could involve your siblings. So you have to think about how are you going to be able to work with this person to handle all the bad stuff that life throws at you. And my husband and I have just been able to do that. And he's actually the first person that I look to, and he feels the same way about me, when bad stuff happens and we have to handle something. We kind of get together and be like, okay, what do we do about this? And how do we handle it and move forward? So I think the key is, when you're looking for somebody, looking for a life partner, you actually have to like the person. Yes, there's love, but you just have to genuinely like who they are as a person. Because once, kind of like the romance is gone, you still have to be with that person and, deal with everyday life things with that person. So probably one of the big, yes, as a dad, with both of my kids, always been there. He was a great dad, heavily involved dad. His job also helped make it easier for him to be that involved in their lives and all their sports, all the activities they did. But I would have to say, it's not the grand singular gestures. It's just the everyday stuff. So like, for example, if we need to swap cars for something and he gives me back my car, usually it always has a full tank of gas. When I decided to make the move, and I left the corporate world to come into doing this, he was extremely supportive of that. And he said, whatever it is that, you need to do to make yourself feel fulfilled, I'm going to support you in that. It's the little things like that, just making sure that, things around the house, like household tasks and things like that. That's kind of how we are. We never leave something for the other person to do. We're very considerate of each other. So to me, it's not about the grand singular gestures that happened, once in a while. It's kind of about the everyday mundane stuff that we do for each other that kind of says it all, just, I don't know, certain things about, I get up at the crack of dawn in the morning, so my car can't be blocked in the driveway. And we always make sure that I never have to worry about moving my car in the morning. Just the little things like that, that we just do for each other, that he does for me, I do for him, that just kind of, we demonstrate to each other that, you matter to me. And what's going on in your life matters to me. And so it's that kind of stuff. I can't say it's been one or two grandiose things. It's just kind of the everyday thing.
Everyone always says there's someone better. There's always someone better. And that kind of bugs me, because it's I don't disagree with them fully, but I don't understand what makes you not content with the person you have now.
Yeah. That is definitely one thing I'd say that I noticed about the generation, and that generation includes my kids too. Is that they always seem to be striving for something. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We used to have a saying, you never want to rest on your laurels, meaning, you should always have at least some goal that you should be reaching for. But there's got to be a happy medium somewhere, right? Whereas you don't want to never be satisfied with anything. But at the same time, you don't want to just kind of keep yourself stagnant either. So there's a happy medium somewhere.
So most couples end in death or divorce, obviously, it's your situation. Even more couples stay due to the fact that, either money or a child, that's why they stay, and they stay miserable throughout the entire process. So what would you say to those couples that feel trapped in the situations? What would you just tell them that, any kind of responses to that?
So, I'm no marriage counselor. I think that Um, I think a lot of it is about setting expectations. Again, like you get married. I think a lot of people are more in love with the concept of what they think marriage is. And they have this expectation of what it's going to be. And then when it falls short of that expectation, and mind you, that expectation may be unrealistic, but to them, that's what they see. And when it falls short of that expectation, they get that, disappointment. So I think sometimes you need to sit back and really look and be realistic about things. Like, is the situation that we're in or how I'm feeling about this situation partly due to me, because they always tend to blame like the other person. Well, it's your fault. And I think that, a little bit of self-reflection is necessary. Does that mean that if somebody sits down and they can like come to realize that, yeah, okay, so maybe I was unrealistic in expecting this, and, I can take responsibility for this, that they can better their situation, okay, that happens probably some percentage of the time. I guess in some percentages of the time, things are just broken to the point where they can't be fixed. And so, then you just have to do, I guess, what's going to be best for you and your family. It's hard for me to say because I never was in that situation. I never had to worry about, oh my God, what would my young children think if, me and their dad ever split up? Like, I never had to worry about that. And I can imagine as a parent that would be a huge consideration. You never want a broken home for your young kids. But, there's a lot of help out there, especially these days. So if you need a third party and a more objective person to come in and mediate and try to get each of you to see exactly what the reality is as opposed to the blown out of proportion drama that maybe you've created,
in their head.
That's one place to start, I would say.
I tell her, stop overthinking. I'm being dramatic. I'll tell Logan, tell me I'm being dramatic. Because sometimes we are overthinkers.
Yes.
And sometimes when I know the other person, I'm able to,
Overthinker.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Wow.
Yeah.
So you obviously mentioned you have 2 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the main message for them to live a healthy and fulfilling life?
So one of the things actually that my mom taught me that I tried to teach them is independence. And I mentioned this before. Again, that's one of the things that my husband also likes about me is the fact that I'm very, very, very self-sufficient. And so that's one of the things that we impressed upon my kids is learn how to take care of yourself. I mean, and obviously having other people in your life is wonderful, getting married is wonderful, but just make sure that you learn how to be self-sufficient and take care of yourself. And that means making sure that what it is that you are doing makes you feel fulfilled, making sure that you are doing everything that you need to live a long, healthy life. So preventive care, huge fan of preventive care. I've drilled it into their heads about preventive care, making sure they see, all the appropriate doctors, their yearly visits, their yearly tests, the dentist, getting their eyes checked. It's become habit for them, so that if they should miss an appointment, they feel thrown off. They're like, oh my God, I have to, get in it. So I've made them, very aware of how important preventive care is. And that's a big thing because a lot of people don't do that. I mean, how many people have you spoken to that haven't been to the dentist in 3 or 4 years? My kids go twice a year, because it's that important. So, it's just making sure that they are, following up on that, feeling fulfilled, and trying not to make stupid decisions too much. Forgiving yourself when there is a little bit of a misstep, because everybody's going to misstep. We're all human. But just making sure you're not dwelling on those missteps and just learning from them and moving on. So.
Thank you.